It was just a normal day in the Dragonlance. Ever since Ember became the new Dragon Lord after her father, Torch, had stepped down, she had maintained the peaceful relationship between the ponykind and the dragons. But despite that she was the new Dragon Lord, there was something else that she missed out in her life, and that to be with someone. She actually has been seen many other young dragons in her own land that had been with some other dragon, and even though that her own father, the former Dragon Lord Torch, had asked her why she hadn't even settled down with another dragon yet, and she explained, being the Dragon Lord, and not only that, being also the ambassador for the for the dragon kind to the kingdoms, it is quite a little bit difficulty and time consuming. Makes it a lot of time that she wouldn't have any time to spend or socialize with the dragon, and especially to find some pony that she could be with. And through that, her father could actually rely on, because ever since when he was a dragon lord, he understood exactly what she was going through. Though even for one part, he wasn't the ambassador for his kind to other kingdoms. But now it has gone into a new era, new times. And even though the Torch himself was a little bit very at first not very much pleased that his own daughter had opened friendly, peaceful relations with the pony kind. Because for generations back, they were always feared for dragons. But now they are at peace with them. But he had to get used to that. So as long as Amber is a dragon lord, she's the one to decide if to maintain the peaceful relations. But even despite her father had a point, she probably should find some pony or at least some dragon to be with. But for at least for now, she hasn't even been focused on any dating or trying to socialize with the dragons to find attractive dragon male to be with. But one day she actually received a letter from Spike, who had invited her over to Ponyville for a visit. And she remembered she hadn't even seen Spike or Ponyville for about a couple of months, in fact. So she decided to go there for the visit, but only for a short time. As she was there, Spike actually had a good time with Amber, but he could actually notice something was on her mind. When he asked her, she explained that her father, the former Dragon Lord, had been complaining that she hadn't found any dragon to be with. And even though that Spike himself was just still a baby dragon, but he still has a very friendly relations with Amber and Smolder, but himself has not been attracted to anyone else except that he had a crush on Rarity. But he said to Amber that she will find some pony that to be with when she is ready, or at least when she it is expected. Because for what he said, love works in a mysterious way. And he couldn't because even if she was hoping to find some pony to be with, but the thing is, he said, as love works in mysterious ways, because she never actually expected to find someone to be with at this early. And she understood from that. And she understood from that, and she promised to keep her eyes open to see if she will ever find any pony attractive. But during her stay in Ponyville, though, things actually started heading up for Amber. She had a lot of good time in Ponyville, though. But despite her good time there was something else, and still keeping on her mind. Because even her short tiny ponytail, she could not get out these things on her mind, off her mind what her father told her. As she herself was getting older, and she probably had that her father had a point and was right. Maybe that she should try to find a mate someday, at least soon enough. She decided to make a try when she gets back to the Dragonlands. And a couple of days later, when she returned, she started to look around among the single male dragons around her age. And surprisingly, there was only a few around her age that still not have been found or taken by the other dragons yet. Among them is in fact Garble. Even though Garble and Amber were actually very good friends, but even when she told him that her father tried to make her to find some pony to be with, that made him laugh a bit though. But despite that, they had a lot of good chemistry, and she in fact enjoyed Garble's poetry. And but he admits that he actually were seeing some dragon already, even though that he had even made it official yet. That made a surprise, but she supported. But there was still that about the thought about finding the dragon to be with. But things actually were as she were expecting that she probably would find some dragon by the end of the year, perhaps. As the weeks passed, as the months passed, winter had arrived a part of the question like in Ponyville. But still, at this point, Amber had even found any pony, or at least any dragon to be with. And by this point, most of the other single male dragons had already found a mate. And she was the only one in her kingdom that hasn't even found a single mate. And she was getting worried about this. If she didn't found any male dragon to be with at this point, maybe there's a maybe it's this maybe it was maybe it wasn't meant that she wasn't meant to find any male dragon to be with. Perhaps she was meant to be alone. But she didn't keep that from apart though. She decided to keep her dreams open, alive, to be able to find some dragon to be with. But one day, just during the winter, she would actually receive a letter from Spike. He actually had invited her to Ponyville to celebrate Heartwarming Eve with him and Twilight at the castle. This would actually be the very first Heartwarming Eve celebration that she ever taken part of. She was in fact considered to go, but after all, at this point she hadn't found any mate, so she thought maybe some celebration, some good times, maybe could bring some smile in her life. So she wrote to Spike saying that she will be back, she will be there in a couple of days. Then, 2 days later, just only about a day before the Heartwarming Eve, Amber actually took off from the Dragonlance, flying by herself. At first, the weather was pretty normal, just a little bit wind, but as soon as she approached in Equestria, the weather started getting a little bit more tougher. Even though even this particular wind at the speed was a challenge for her. It was something that she could handle. But as she continued to fly, the wind speed started picking up even more and more. And soon enough, the speed of the wind had increased such a speed she was not in Barely would have to keep herself up to, above the tree branches of the tree of the forest that she was above. But suddenly, a strong wind actually pushed her on her side, on her back, and she was not prepared for it. And this was in fact a very strong wind. She was knocked down to the ground. She was knocked out on her back, and it pushed her through the trees below her. She literally crashed down through the tree branches, some of the brave ones, and she hit the ground with a bang. She lost the consciousness for a brief moment, and when she woke up only for about a few minutes later, she remembers what happened and tried to and she was about to try to fly off again, but she realized her wing was hurt. It was nothing serious as she thought herself. So she took off in the strong wind despite her right wing was hurting. But she probably tried to block out the pain as much as she could. And for the first for about the first 10 to 15 minutes, things started to look up that the wind started to lower down the speed again, and she maybe thought she would make it. But then suddenly the wind picked up again. But this time it a little bit stronger, and despite her hurt wing, she tried to keep her height, the altitude above tree lines. But as the wind was getting strong and that her wing was hurt, she couldn't try to block out the pain anymore. As another strong wind pushed her back, she fell down on the ground a second time, but this time she threw a denser part of a tree branch, and she hit the ground, but this time she didn't even wake up. But at the same time, Spike and Twilight was getting worried about since she hadn't even arrived at Ponyville yet. So they were actually getting wondered if Amber was even coming. But when they actually heard these reports from Rainbow mentioning this, that some local team of the Ponyville actually had made a very strong weather storm that is approaching. So they thought maybe that is the reason why Amber hasn't even arrived yet. Maybe she landed on the ground, took shelter somewhere to wait out the storm. So that makes sense to them both. But the next day, something actually did happen. Early next morning, a couple of ponies were out in the forest looking for some firewood when some of them actually came across something on the ground underneath some snow. First, they thought maybe it was some animal that has got woken up from this slumber and something. But when it's actually noticed it was a dragon, they were actually scared what to do. They first thought maybe this dragon was dead or something, but it wasn't. They may realize this dragon was still alive. And since this was no other things they could do, they actually put the dragon in the cart and pushed the cart all the way to nearest hospital, which turned out to be Ponyville's hospital. Amber actually was quite close to Ponyville, but she didn't even notice yet. And at the hospital, the doctors, they actually had no idea what to do. Since all their lives they had been practiced in helping ponies, not dragons. And none of the doctors or nurses actually wasn't even trained or hadn't even studied dragon anatomy. So they had no idea if this was serious conditions or if it was a normal break. But the only thing they could do, they actually sent Nurse Redheart into town to Twat's castle because she has very standard contact with the Dragon Lord, the dragons, and she may have some information about dragons. So when she actually arrived at the castle, She knocked on the door, and Spike opened, and he was expecting Amber, but Nurse Redheart. He was surprised. He asked her what brings her there, and she explained that she needed to talk to Twilight immediately. It was very urgent. So Twilight came around, and when they both actually heard what happened, they had heard a blue dragon had been found outside of Ponyville near the hospital. But since none of the doctors or nurses had any training or the basic understanding of dragons, they didn't even know how to help this particular dragon. And they were afraid if they would do anything could make things worse or just or another wouldn't help at all. So they had asked Twilight to come over to see if she has any basic. Twilight immediately went in the library and she found a book of dragons that she had written by the help of Amber and Smolder. So she took the book with her to the hospital with Spike. But they get the biggest shock ever. Because when they went in the patient's room, they saw there was Amber, still unconscious. They asked the doctor and the nurse Redheart, what happened? When did she arrive? And they explained that some ponies actually found her in the forest not too far away from the hospital. And they brought her here about maybe an hour ago. And they explained to them that this is the Dragon Lord Amber, the ruler of the Dragonlands, and a friend of them. They were actually shocked. But now it was that she had a book that explained some of the details about dragons and some of the common injuries and some easy way to help them. So after that, about a few hours later, Amber actually woke up. She saw Spike and Twilight. She wondered where she was being. She saw that she was in some sort of room. They explained that she was in a hospital. Hospital? Then they asked her what was the last thing that she remembers before waking up here. She explained the last thing she remembers that she was flying in this bad weather with this hurt wing. And she remembered her wing. And she found that it had been put some bandage over it. And Twilight explained that she is not allowed to be flying for at least a couple of weeks because it was quite serious injury. Spy explained, though, that the doctors at the hospital had no idea how to help her because they had never been trained how to take care of dragons before. But thanks to Twilight's book that she had help from Smolder and Amber, they were able to help her. She thanked Twilight for that, and she said, "This book will actually seem to be a good thing to help, and for this especially. Not only for this, but will be a great help for Smolder and even Amber. If Spike would had get any serious injury during the time, this book would be a great access. It would have been a great deal help for him too." So while they're talking, Nurse Redheart walks in and asks Amber how she feels, if there's any sort of pain left, or and Amber explained that she still has some pain in her wing, but it was something that she could manage. Nurse Redheart actually gave her some pills that said this might help some of the pain. And Nurse Redheart asked Twilight if if Amber is going to stay at the castle for time. She explained that she will be, and Amber, since she was not unable to fly for the next 2 to 3 weeks, so Spike had been asked if he could go to the Dragonlands, and with help of Garble to maybe look after the kingdom. Even though this plan was not a good idea, maybe Amber said, but what other option did he have? So Amber agreed. Nurse Redheart explained that she will be coming by to the castle to look at Amber to see how her condition after is getting better or worse. and they both agreed. So even though Spike was about to go into the heartwarming to Dragonlance, but he decided to celebrate the holidays with Amber and Twilight. And Amber actually had a good time. So the next day, Spike went to Dragonlance to look after it with help of Garble. So for the next couple of days, Nurse Redheart actually came by to the castle a couple of times a day, maybe like 2 times a day, just to see how things has going for Amber. And in fact, there was another reason why she was also there. She was in fact really interested to learn more about the dragons, since she had been looking after Spy for a couple of times, but just after that, Twilight had moved to Pulverville. She was actually getting to know more about dragons in Amber's age, and despite that, they actually started picking up a very good friendship between them. But after about a few weeks, Amber's wings had to be fully recovered. She thanked Nurse Redheart for her help, and she said if she still had any questions know more about the dragons, she can always write to her. She will always answer. She thanked for that. But a couple of weeks after that, Amber had returned. Things actually started heading up for Amber now. She and Nurse Redheart had maintained a very kind pen pals relationship. But over time, just about 2 months after, Amber had started to realize that she likes Nurse Redheart even more than as a friend. She wasn't even sure if this was gonna work. After all, she's a mare, and she's a female dragon. She asked her father just a random question: if how would if he how would he felt if she would have been ending up with a mare with a female pony as being as a partner. He was not really sure about this question first, but he agreed that he would be surprised, shocked, but he would support her no matter what. Even though it will be a little bit hard for him at first though. So around spring, Amber actually went back to Ponyville to serve for just for a short visit, but during that time though, she spent a lot of time with Nurse Redheart. They actually became very close, but during that short time, she admits to Nurse Redheart about her feelings for her. Even at first, she was expecting that Nurse Redheart was somehow telling her she was not into dragons or the same gender. She was only into mare, stallions. But to her big surprise, Nurse Redheart actually said that she was willing to give them a chance to see if this could actually work. So despite the long distance between them, and that Nurse Redheart sometimes usually don't have much time off from her work, but when she did have time off, she traveled to Dragonlance by herself to spend time with Amber. And that actually was something they really both agreed and very much appreciated. There were a lot of big question marks, some of their friends, like from Twilight and Spike and others, saying, is this something gonna work despite this long distance? Since, despite that, the Dragonlance is located a few days away of travel, at least about maybe just 1 or 2 days apart, traveling from Equestria, at least from Ptolemy. But they made it work. Despite that they could probably see each other maybe as max of 2 to 3 times per month. But sometimes they probably see each other maybe just one time per just 1 month. But they always made it work. But after they had been like dating for this for over by a year, Amber, she actually decided she wanted to ask Nurse Redheart a big question. But before then, she wanted to know exactly if it was possible for her to even get married with Nurse Redheart, because they are not the same species. So she asked Twilight for that. And according to Twilight, it was perfectly legal. They could get married despite of being not the same species. So, when Ember actually popped a question to Nurse Redheart, she didn't hesitate with a second. She actually said yes immediately. Amber, she was excited, and in fact, she had asked Twilight if she wanted to make this perform the ceremony, which she said yes. So Spike had been asked to be the rain bearer, and they actually had a great time on the wedding. They actually had invited a couple of friends from Dragonlance like Garble and Van France. Even though the Torch himself said that he wished that he could come, but he didn't. But he said that he was really happy for his daughter's choice. Well, though, he said to her as a gift, while they were away on their honeymoon, he will be the temporarily Dragon Lord while she returned. And she agreed. They actually went to Las Vegas for a week. And there they had this amazing time. Having enjoyed the rides and just having a great time together. But then, another when they had returned back to Ponyville, there was another question. Where were going to live? Right, Amber could just not leave the Dragonlands because she had responsibility to be the Dragon Lord. And Nurse Redheart, she could just leave because she was a nurse and she enjoyed it. And there weren't any even if she would still work as a nurse in the Dragonlands, there wouldn't be much help for her. After all, she would be the only pony in the Dragonlands. But then, Amber actually admits this was a big dilemma for them both. But she made the biggest sacrifice ever. She pointed out Garble to be her immediate successor as a Dragon Lord. And in fact, she actually had even made a different change. She even made Garble not the new Dragon Lord, but also the very first king of the Dragon Lord, of the Dragonlands. She had made the very first royal family of of the Dragonlands, which made Smolder princess of the Dragonlands. After that, Amber decided to move to Ponyville to stay with Nurse Redheart. She was amazed at the big sacrifice she did, but she agreed that maybe it is for the best. And just 2 years later, they wanted to have a family, so they asked Twilight if it was possible to have a baby together despite not being the same species. And since both actually had learned that she had learned a spell that can help two mares have a baby. So they asked her if this spell could work on a dragon and a mare. Twilight actually was a bit surprised at all, but she wasn't even 100% sure herself. But she agreed to give it a try. So Nurse Redheart decided that she would be pregnant. So after a couple of times they've been figure out how the spell would work on this, and then they both actually announced they were expecting a baby, and they were really excited about it. And a few months later, they had their baby, and they had a son, which they named Medic Torch. Medic Torch. He was really calm as a filly or as a colt, but he actually loved to have a dragon mother and a pony mother. And in fact, he was always curious to know more about his mother Amber's life. How things how does it like to be a dragon? But knowing that he is himself half dragon, half pony. And in fact, despite he didn't have any wings, but he was actually somehow had inherited his mother's speed in running. And he, despite that he's half dragon, but he couldn't even breathe fire. But but as long as he was a bad fast runner, and he even had get a long tail, a different part from his mother Amber. And in fact, he loved to be part of dragon because he thought dragons was really cool, awesome, kind. But despite that, even at a very young age, around 10 or 12, he actually found a very interest to be a doctor. After seeing his mother was helping at the local hospital in Ponyville, he wanted to be a doctor himself. He wanted to be able to help ponies and any other creatures. So when he was getting older, he studied very hard as much as he could to be a doctor. And when he was old enough, he applied for medical school in Baltimore, which turned out to be one of the best medical schools in the kingdom. After that, after he finished at the school, he decided to remain in Baltimore. And in fact, after he was finished with his studying that, and he became a full trained doctor, he actually was offered a position as a doctor at the local hospital in Baltimore. And he took it immediately. And both his parents was actually very happy that he had fulfilled his childhood dream. But there, it changed a little different. Because around the same time when he was working as a doctor, he fell in love with a nurse, a mare. And they started dating after about 4 years. And in fact, he actually was really happy about it. When they got married, they actually had two daughters of their own. Even for Amber and Nurse Redheart, their relationship was among the few unique, rare relationships. And knowing in this random coincidence, they actually how they met. Like, if Amber had even had decided to wait, to had to decide to land on the ground, wait out the storm, she may not have even had to go to the hospital. She may not have even met Nurse Redheart. And at that point, they may not have even been pen pals. They wouldn't have been friends, and they wouldn't have even developed romantic feelings for each other. So despite that, Amber actually felt maybe they was meant fate. They were meant to meet in that unusual, different way. But when she mentioned this to Nurse Redheart, she totally agreed with her. Because who knows what life had stored for them. But knowing how much they love each other, and not only that, to have found their true soulmate, their true love, and even to be married with the one they love the most of all, despite being a different species. To them, love conquers all. Even that when they had a son, which always makes them both happy. And this is how Ember and Nurse Redheart found a true love, got a family together. The end.